My entire savings. Bought 50 acres. My future, rooted in soil I paid for. Now? A crooked wooden sign wobbling by a gate I didn't authorize. Pinebrook Hollow, a community of order and beauty. Sounds like a retirement brochure. Looks like a zoning violation. 90 beige houses, identical as copy-paste emails, now sit on my land, a place where I once dreamed of building cabins and planting pecan trees. My fishing pond has been reborn as Serenity Lake, complete with floating yoga mats. The shed I built with borrowed tools? Replaced by a community pergola. And right next to the new mailbox hub, someone had the audacity to erect a statue of Brenda Holt, HOA president, self-declared savior, and full-time land thief. Leave a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. If you're into wild, true-feeling stories packed with twists, poetic justice, and just the right dose of HOA madness, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story is even more jaw-dropping, and trust me, the surprises coming next, you definitely don't want to miss them. Brenda saw me coming from the gate like I was a delivery mix-up. I told the security guard I was the landowner. He radioed in like I was trying to break into Fort Knox with a lunchbox. 10 minutes later, Brenda came strutting out like a cocktail of perfume, privilege, and perfectly curled threats. "Mr. Callahan, I presume?" she said, with a smile that felt like an insult. I handed her my deed, clean, notarized, dated, crystal clear. She flipped open a folder like it held the cure for ownership. "This land was declared abandoned and acquired through proper county channels," she chirped. I told her I'd paid property taxes religiously for 7 years. She smiled like I'd confessed to jaywalking. "We turned this dump into paradise," she said, gesturing toward the HOA lawn statues like they'd cured cancer. "You had your chance." Now, I'm a pretty calm guy, but when someone builds a gated suburb on top of your land and calls you the problem, it's hard to stay calm. I pointed to the deed again. She barely glanced. That's when the crowd started gathering. Dog walkers, stroller pushers, retirees with HOA badges. Brenda went full stage play. "This man is trying to claim Pinebrook Hollow with fake documents," she announced. "He wants to take your homes." The crowd looked at me like I'd shown up with a wrecking ball. One lady whispered, "Shameful," under her breath. A guy folded his arms like he was preparing for battle. Brenda weaponized fear with a practiced hand and a cordless mic. Within minutes, I went from landowner to public enemy number 1. I was escorted off my own property while Brenda stood near her statue waving to the residents like she'd just delivered peace to the Middle East. I sat in my truck staring at the deed in my lap, fingers clenched so tight the paper bent like it knew how bad it was getting. The land was mine. The taxes were paid. The dream was real. And now there were 89 families who didn't know they were living on land that legally belonged to someone else. I could have shouted. I could have cried. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called Derek Monroe, my old college roommate turned property attorney. "Derek," I said, "someone stole my land, built a town on it, and put their name on the welcome sign." There was a long pause. "You drunk?" he asked. "I wish," I said. That was the moment I stopped reacting and started planning. Brenda thought she'd pulled off the perfect heist. Quiet, shiny, HOA approved. But I wasn't backing down, not after 7 years of saving, scrimping, and dreaming. You don't walk away from something you built with sacrifice just because someone else paved over it and put up a dog park. You fight, and you make sure every clipboard queen and HOA megaphone tyrant learns that some people don't fold, they file. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war. And Brenda Holt had no idea who she'd just fenced out. While my friends bought Teslas and takeout, I bought 50 acres of trouble. It wasn't glamorous. No granite countertops, no rooftop views. Just a patch of overlooked earth in a sleepy part of North Carolina where the deer outnumbered people and the Wi-Fi gave up before it started. I was 25, fresh out of college with a degree in data analytics and no business buying anything but a sandwich, but something about owning land felt permanent, like planting a flag in the middle of chaos and saying, I exist, and I've got paperwork to prove it. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that meant something back then. Still does. I skipped every flashy thing people my age were chasing. No big apartment with exposed brick. No lease on a car I couldn't afford. I lived in a studio that echoed when I blinked and spent weekends working double shifts while researching soil quality. Every extra dollar went toward that land. And when I finally signed the deed, Nathaniel Callahan, sole owner, I felt like I'd pulled off the heist of the century. 50 acres, cleared title, cleared taxes. It was the grown-up version of catching a home run ball at a baseball game and being the only one who knew it was yours, fair and square. And I wasn't planning to sell it, I was planning to grow with it. Kept the deed in a fireproof safe, along with every tax receipt. Year after year, I made those payments like clockwork. No matter what else was happening, breakups, job layoffs, the time I got food poisoning from a gas station burrito, I always mailed that check. Because land doesn't just represent money. It represents intention. It says you believed in something long enough to put your name on it. I figured when I was ready, I'd develop it. Cabins, maybe eco-rentals, maybe just a quiet place to think. It was my backup plan, and my main dream rolled into one. Which is why, when I pulled up 7 years later and saw Brenda's empire sitting there like a Hallmark movie on steroids, I nearly swallowed my tongue. GPS said I was on my land. Coordinates matched, fence lines matched, but none of what I was looking at did. Gone were the trees I'd studied. Gone was the ditch I always meant to fill. In their place stood cookie-cutter houses lined up tighter than excuses at a tax audit, beige siding, identical shutters, plastic mailboxes pretending to be rustic. The only variety was which lawn gnome faced which direction. I was so stunned I thought I'd driven into a movie set. A sign told me otherwise. Pine Brook Hollow, a community of order and beauty. The only thing beautiful was how fast my blood pressure rose. And the order part? That came with a man in a security vest who told me I was the third person this year claiming to own the land. Third. That should have stopped everything right there. If 3 people are showing up with deeds to the same land, that's not a coincidence. That's a red flag the size of a parade float. But Brenda? She had her story ready, told me the land was abandoned public space and had been sold through proper channels, smiled while saying it like she was reading me a bedtime lie. When I mentioned the tax payments, she waved it off, said I must have been paying on the wrong parcel, like that's a thing people do. I told her my name's on the county record. She raised an eyebrow and said, well, so is mine. That's when I realized this wasn't about confusion. It was about control. And the worst part? She didn't even look worried, not a twitch, not a crack in her voice. She'd built a community on stolen land and was so sure she'd get away with it she had the nerve to act like I was the one in the wrong. That level of confidence, it's not natural. It's engineered. Which meant someone had greased some palms, shuffled some papers, and locked some gates before I ever pulled up. Brenda wasn't winging this. She'd done it before. And she was betting I'd just go away. But I didn't spend 7 years paying taxes on a dream just to let someone else decorate it with HOA bylaws and yoga mats. Not a chance. And if she thought I was the third man to walk away without a fight, she was about to find out what the fourth one does differently. She pointed at my chest and called me a fraud, while holding a forged map in her hand. That takes talent, the kind of bold-faced confidence usually reserved for cult leaders and cable news anchors. I stood there, still clutching my original deed, the ink practically still glowing under the sun, while Brenda Holt laid her HOA manifesto across the hood of my truck like it was the gospel. This land was transferred to us through a county acquisition, she chirped, tapping the corner of a document so freshly laminated it looked like it hadn't even cooled yet. I told her, again, that I had 7 years of tax receipts and a deed filed under Nathaniel Callahan, sole owner. Her response? A condescending smile and a little shake of the head like I was a child confusing monopoly money for real currency. Brenda had what I've come to call clipboard authority, the ability to say something insane with complete poise because she's holding a document. Real or fake, didn't matter. She weaponized that folder like a magician does a deck of cards. And just like that, the crowd started to form. First, it was a man walking his golden retriever, then a couple pushing a stroller, and before I knew it, there were 24 people watching this play out like it was HOA theater. Brenda raised her voice just enough to pull him in. "This gentleman," she said, gesturing toward me like I was a raccoon in her pantry, "is attempting to claim legal ownership of our homes. He's been carrying around a fraudulent deed." Fraudulent. That word hit like a slap across the face made of red tape. I tried to explain. I really did, calmly. I held out my paperwork, pointed out the county registration number, explained the tax history. One man asked, "Then why haven't you built anything here in 7 years?" Brenda jumped in before I could answer, layering on her sugar and steel routine. "Exactly. He let this land rot. We turned it into something beautiful." She gestured toward the houses like she'd personally poured the foundations. "These families made lives here, and now he wants to rip it all down? For what? Money?" The crowd turned colder. A kid clutched his mom's leg. An elderly man spat on the curb in my direction. Brenda wasn't just dismissing my ownership, she was reframing it as an attack on their lives. Suddenly, I wasn't a landowner. I was a threat to harmony. There's a special kind of rage that comes when someone steals your future and dares to act like the victim. Brenda played that role like she had a script and stage lighting. When I pushed back, she dropped the smile and leaned in close. "Listen, Mr. Callahan," she hissed, her voice low but cutting. "You had your window, it closed. We built something that matters here. You showing up with old paperwork doesn't change that." I asked her flat out if she knew the land was never public. Her response? "Your lack of action gave us the right to act." Then she stepped back, raised her voice, and called me a squatter. A squatter. On the land I bought, protected, and paid for with every dime I could scrape together at 25. Brenda's version of justice was basically, possession is 9/10, and the rest can be faked. Security showed up again, same guy from earlier. Brenda gave a half smile, half nod, and just like that I was escorted off my own property again. No shouting, no argument, just silent glares from neighbors who didn't even know they were standing on stolen soil. I got in my truck, hands shaking, heart pounding, not from fear, but fury. The kind that builds in your ribs and won't leave. Brenda stood by that ridiculous sign as I pulled away, her clipboard tucked under one arm, waving to residents like she'd just defended the town from a burglar. I didn't have a voice in that moment, but I still had my deed. I still had my taxes, and I still had the truth. It wasn't over. Not even close. You don't let someone paint over your name and call it progress. You fight. And next time, I'd be ready. She had a megaphone and pearls. I had a fake ID and rage. Derek called it strategic entry. I called it what it was, a last-ditch, mildly illegal, deeply satisfying plan. After my very public humiliation at the gate, I knew I wasn't getting back in as Nathaniel Callahan. So Derek, with the calm of a man who once faked a fraternity transcript for a final, printed me up a perfectly believable resident pass. Name, Cal Monroe. Address, 41 Birch Trail. HOA status, concerned citizen. I memorized my backstory like I was prepping for a congressional hearing. Cal was a quiet guy, newly moved in, curious about community leadership. The perfect cover for a guy about to crash a suburban pep rally with a legally armed smile. I arrived at the HOA meeting 5 minutes early, slipped through the side entrance and found a seat in the back row. The room was a casserole of forced friendliness, cookie platters, folding chairs, and neighbors who all looked like they'd spent the afternoon debating birdhouse regulations. No one noticed me, which was good, because I couldn't stop scanning the walls like a man expecting a trap door to open. My heart was doing laps in my chest, but I stayed still. Act normal, I told myself, which was hard, because nothing about this felt normal. I was sitting in a building constructed on stolen land, surrounded by people who thought I was the thief. and the woman they worshipped was about to walk in, like she was hosting the Oscars. Right on cue, Brenda entered to a round of applause so rehearsed it could have come with cue cards. Megaphone in hand, power suit crisp, necklace swinging like a metronome on the neck of a sociopath. She waved, thanked everyone, and got straight to the drama. "Before we begin tonight's agenda," she said, in that syrupy tone I'd come to loathe, "I want to address the dangerous misinformation being spread by an individual claiming to own this land." Whispers rippled. A woman in the front row gasped like she'd just heard we were under siege. Brenda continued, her hand to her chest, milking every ounce of phony concern. "This man has forged documents. He's trying to scare hard-working families. But let me be clear, Pinebrook Hollow is safe. Your homes are safe." Her necklace twirled faster, which meant, according to my growing Brenda decoder, she was lying through her freshly whitened teeth. I scanned the crowd for anyone not drinking the HOA Kool-Aid and spotted her. Emily Carter. HOA secretary, early 30s, anxious posture, eyes like she hadn't slept since the last meeting. She sat off to the side, jotting down notes, occasionally glancing at Brenda, then at the floor. When Brenda mentioned forged deeds, Emily's pen froze. She looked toward the back, toward me, but didn't make a move. I wasn't sure what that meant yet, but she didn't look like someone convinced I was the enemy, and that was something. For the first time in this mess, I felt the ground shift, just a little. Maybe not everyone here was lost. And then Brenda's eyes met mine. I didn't blink. I should have. Her smile dropped a fraction. She tilted her head. Recognition clicked, and without missing a beat, she raised her megaphone and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, the land thief is in this very room." The room turned like a pack of synchronized swimmers, all eyes on me. A man in a Pinebrook polo stood up like he was auditioning for Mall Cop of the Year. Brenda pointed dramatically. Honestly, I think she practiced it in the mirror. "That man is trying to take your homes," she roared. The room erupted into chaos. Someone threw a cup. A woman screamed, "Get him out!" I backed toward the exit, slow and careful, until I was out the door and sprinting to my truck. When I got there, I stopped cold. Spray paint. Red. All over the side of my truck. "Land crook" on the windshield. "Get out" on the door. A cartoon drawing of me holding a deed, fanged like a vampire. Brenda had turned an entire neighborhood into her personal mob, and me? I was just the ghost of a landowner, trying to reclaim what was his. As I stood there, stunned, I knew one thing. She was scared. If she wasn't, she wouldn't be lashing out, and fear, especially the kind hiding behind HOA meeting smiles, is something you can work with. I wasn't leaving, I was doubling down. And next time, I wouldn't just walk in, I'd bring proof. And a spotlight. She handed me a USB drive with a red X scratched over the HOA logo. In suburban terms, that's not just a cry for help, it's a declaration of war. We were sitting in a corner booth at the most neutral place we could think of, a coffee shop with stale muffins and a manager who looked like he'd slept through the last decade. Emily Carter, formerly Brenda's HOA secretary, now nervous truth-teller, slid into the seat across from me like she was meeting an informant. She looked exhausted. Hair in a bun held together by what might have been a pencil. Hands shaking, eyes darting like someone who knew she was being watched. "I shouldn't be here," she said, "but I can't stay quiet anymore. That's how you know things are bad. When the people inside the machine finally cracked." She pulled out the USB like it weighed more than her conscience. "Brenda's been getting paid under the table by Orchid Development Corp," she said. "Consulting fees, over 200 grand. I blinked. "For what?" Emily laughed, bitter. "For making it easy to steal your land." She explained it all, how Brenda used her connections at the county office to reclassify the property as abandoned, how Orchid filed paperwork that slid under the radar, how Brenda signed off on it all, then turned around and built a narrative so airtight even the residents felt patriotic defending it. Emails, bank transfers, phone logs, dinner receipts. Emily had it all. And just like that, the HOA drama stopped being personal and became criminal. I asked her why she was coming to me now. She looked away for a second. Because I have a son, because I want to sleep again, because what she's doing is wrong, and if I don't say something now, I'm just another cog in her machine. It was the kind of confession that hits harder than evidence because it came with risk. Emily wasn't just sharing receipts, she was lighting a match. I was about to thank her when I saw a familiar white SUV screech into the lot. Doors slammed, heels clicked, and in walked Brenda Holt like she owned the building, the street, and the air we were breathing. Her eyes zeroed in on Emily, then flicked to the USB in my hand. No words. Just that look people give before a tornado hits. She stormed up to the table. "Emily Rena Carter," she said through gritted teeth. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Emily's voice cracked, but didn't break. "Leaving." Brenda's laugh was pure venom. "Oh no, you're not leaving. You're fired immediately." People in the coffee shop looked up, confused. I stood slowly, ready to block whatever explosion was coming. Brenda's eyes locked onto mine. "And you," she hissed, "are violating your restraining order." "I hadn't even seen the papers yet. It'll be in your mailbox by noon." Then she turned back to Emily, voice raised for everyone to hear. "You just ended your career. I hope you enjoy grocery store shifts, traitor." And like that, she was gone. Just wind, fury, and the smell of overpriced perfume. By the next morning, Pinebrook Hollow had declared war on Emily Carter. Flyers with her face stapled to telephone poles. Dishonest, disloyal, dangerous. An email blast accusing her of embezzling HOA funds and conspiring with outside agitators. Her grocery store part-time job, gone. After Brenda threatened a community boycott, in 24 hours she was exiled. Meanwhile, I was hit with a shiny new restraining order, claiming I'd been harassing residents and making threats. Classic Brenda. Play the villain, sue like the victim. But I had something she didn't have anymore. Proof. And thanks to Emily's RedX USB, I had enough to sink her HOA kingdom straight into the manicured lawn she stole it from. That night, I uploaded the documents. The emails. The payment records, the planning notes between Brenda and Orchid Development. I kept names private where I could, but the facts were too loud to ignore, and then I posted the recording, with Emily's consent, of her explaining everything. The video went viral in less than 48 hours. HOA forums lit up, news stations called, a local anchor messaged me directly. "Can we talk about the HOA queen who bought a town with fake deeds?" Brenda had spun a silk cocoon of lies. But silk doesn't hold up well in a storm. And the forecast? Yeah, it was changing fast. If you found this story helpful or eye-opening, send it to a friend who's dealing with HOA headaches or land disputes of their own, because trust me, they're out there. Sharing stories like this helps more people stand up for what's theirs. And if you've ever been gaslit by a clipboard queen like Brenda, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think of this story. Your voice might just help someone else fight back. She cried in court while her 3 lawyers waved a 1957 map, and I stood there holding the truth, watching it burn like yesterday's news. My deed, tax receipts, and Emily's damning USB evidence, neatly organized, calmly presented, and completely ignored. Brenda's legal squad showed up in matching suits like synchronized sharks, selling a fantasy so polished you could hang it in a museum of lies. They told the judge I was a greedy outsider trying to displace 89 innocent families. Brenda sniffled on cue, dabbing her dry eyes like the victim of a melodrama she wrote, directed, and produced. Meanwhile, I'd brought receipts and got handed a bill. The courtroom gallery looked more like a pep rally than a hearing. Residents in matching Save Pinebrook shirts, holding laminated signs like they were defending sacred ground. I recognized some of the faces. People who'd once glared at me through picket fences, now nodding solemnly at every word Brenda said. She painted herself as the patron saint of beige suburbia, claiming she rescued the land from ruin and built hope where there was only neglect. The crowd ate it up like free Costco samples. The judge, bless him, looked like he just wanted everyone to calm down and go home. Justice wasn't blind, it was just tired. Derek did everything right. He laid out our case clean, methodical, factual. Our evidence proved the land was mine, that Brenda forged records, took bribes, and built her HOA empire on top of my dreams. But the judge said removing the residence would cause irreparable disruption to the community. His compromise? I pay her legal fees, over $30,000. And on top of that, he granted Brenda's request for a permanent restraining order. I was now legally banned from stepping foot on my own 50 acres. Brenda smirked like she'd just aced prom queen and valedictorian in the same afternoon. If this was justice, it had one too many HOA stickers slapped on it. Back home, I stared at my bank account until the zeros blurred. 30 grand in legal debt, a permanent ban from my own property, and a community that thought I was the villain in a story I built from scratch. For a minute, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe I lost. Maybe some dreams don't end in fireworks, just in paperwork and silence. But then I opened the back of my closet and found something I hadn't touched in years. A beat-up blue spiral notebook. Inside were sketches I made at 25, zoning ideas, soil test notes, diagrams for cabins, notes about wind angles for solar panels, page after page of possibility. That wasn't a notebook, it was a manifesto. I sat down, flipped through every page, and felt something stir that court couldn't touch. Hope. But not the soft kind. The kind that hardens into resolve. I whispered, "Not over," because I meant it. Not after everything I gave up to own that land. Not after watching it stolen with a smile and a fake map. That night, I called Derek. "You busy?" I asked. "You planning revenge or just venting?" he replied. "Both," I said. And together, we built a new plan. One that didn't ask for permission. One last bold play that wouldn't just prove my case, it would drag Brenda's truth into daylight, kicking and screaming. And something told me this time we were the ones with the spotlight. 3 slides, 1 megaphone meltdown, and the HOA mayor taking notes from the back row. That's how the power started to shift. After the court fiasco, Derek and I knew we couldn't out-lawyer Brenda in front of a sleepy judge. But what if we turned her own theater against her, turned her stage into a spotlight? So we planned a little presentation of our own. A town hall ambush, perfectly timed, legally clean, and custom-made to shred her suburban illusion in front of the people she'd brainwashed into chanting her name like she sold peace in a bottle. All we needed was a borrowed projector, 3 explosive slides, and the mayor's attention. Derek said, "We'll give them truth with subtitles." I said, "And drama with popcorn." We waited until halfway through the HOA meeting. Brenda was already mid-performance, pacing behind her podium like she was preaching from the gospel of gated bliss. "We must remain united against outside threats," she boomed through that cracked megaphone of hers, which squealed with each syllable like even it was tired of her. Residents nodded along, hypnotized. Matching shirts, clapping at all the right beats. Then Derek quietly flipped on the projector in the back. I stood up, took the mic, and said, "Before we vote on anything, I've got something to show you." Murmurs swelled. Brenda's eyes locked on me like lasers, but it was too late. Slide 1 hit the wall. My original deed next to the HOA's property map, a perfect overlay. Every lot, sidewalk, and playground was sitting on land still titled to me. The crowd hushed. Brenda froze. Then came slide 2, emails from Orchid Development Corp., payments to Brenda, subject lines like site control confirmed and county dock push approved, and then the final blow. Slide 3, a video of Brenda signing contracts with Orchid, muttering, "Just get me the fees," under her breath while smiling at a stack of cash like it was a wedding proposal. You could hear the audience inhale all at once. That kind of silence? It's louder than shouting. Even Brenda's megaphone couldn't save her. She fumbled for it anyway, flipping the switch and blasting a choppy recording. "This," she screamed, "is the real Nate Callahan. Listen to him threatening me." It was a butchered clip, sliced to make me sound like I was calling for revolution, when I'd actually been asking for coffee. Derek walked calmly up to the speaker and pressed play on the original audio. My full sentence echoed across the hall. "You built this entire thing on lies, Brenda. You knew it was my land and you didn't care." Her editing job unraveled in real time. Then the mayor stood, clipboard in hand, voice flat and clear. "I've reviewed the original land records. Mr. Callahan's deed matches our city archives completely." And that was it. The truth, finally spoken from someone nobody could ignore. Brenda's face tightened, her pearls practically vibrating with rage. And then, like a toddler losing the game she invented, she stormed toward the projector, ripped out the cord, and screamed, "This is all fake! They're trying to destroy what we built!" The room erupted, but this time not for her. People stood, some in confusion, some in disbelief, and some, for the first time, in anger at her. "You lied to us," one man said. "You knew," whispered another. The chant started slow, just a few voices. "Step down, step down." It picked up momentum like a wave. Brenda looked around, cornered, mascara smudging, mouth twitching between panic and denial. She held up the megaphone again, but no one was listening, not anymore. Her grip on Pinebrook Hollow, on the people, the lies, the power, was cracking like cheap drywall. I stood quietly at the back, watching the first splinters of her empire fall. We weren't done yet, but now we weren't alone, and that changed everything. I posed as a buyer named Cal Properties. Brenda showed me my own deed and laughed. That's how far off the rails she'd gone. After the town hall collapse, she knew the residents were slipping through her fingers, but she still had one move left: sell fast and disappear faster. Derek's plan was simple: pose as an out-of-state investor looking to buy all 89 homes in Pinebrook Hollow. The beauty of it? Totally legal. I was willing to buy if that's what it took to reclaim what was mine. Brenda saw dollar signs. I saw a confession waiting to happen. We set the meeting for Tuesday. Derek coached me like I was preparing for a courtroom sting, only this time I wore the suit and she walked into the trap. Her HOA office was a converted garage, complete with faux leadership plaques and framed photos of Brenda cutting ribbons no one asked for. She shook my hand with too much perfume and too little caution. "Mr. Cal," she beamed, "this community would be a perfect addition to your firm's portfolio." She launched into a sales pitch so rehearsed I was half convinced she'd written it on the back of a cereal box. When I asked about ownership records, she didn't flinch, pulled out a copy of my original deed and said, "This used to belong to some guy who vanished. The county classified it as abandoned. We fixed it up." I clicked the recorder inside my briefcase, her voice casual as a lunch order, admitting to rewriting history like it was just good marketing. I pressed gently, asking what would happen if that original owner ever reappeared. Brenda chuckled. "He tried. We crushed him in court. The case was weak. Community first. That's what matters." Then she slid the draft sale contract across the desk and said, "These homes are yours if you want them. I have the authority to sign." And she did, right there. Signed on a property she didn't legally own, thinking she'd just handed off her problems to a new investor. That's when I leaned forward, pulled off my reading glasses, and said calmly, "Brenda, my full name is Nathaniel Callahan, and you just sold me my own land on tape." Her face lost color so fast I thought she'd been unplugged. Her hand froze halfway through capping the pen. Then came the stammering. Then the denial. Then the screams. "You can't use this! It's entrapment!" she shrieked, lunging for the contract. I leaned back and smiled. "Ohio's a one-party consent state. You said all this willingly, Brenda." She looked like a glitching robot, necklace twirling like a wind-up toy about to snap. Derek walked in with 2 copies of the tape, one headed straight to the mayor's office. Brenda tried calling her lawyer, but by that point her empire wasn't just cracked, it was crumbling. We held a press conference the next morning. Derek presented the recording, the signed documents, the timeline. The media swarmed like ants at a picnic, and for once, Brenda didn't have a megaphone to hide behind. Just evidence. Cold, clear, undeniable. Court moved faster than expected, which happens when you show up with a confession in surround sound. The judge didn't even blink, declared all HOA actions null and void. The land reverted to me immediately. The HOA dissolved. Brenda convicted. 5 years for fraud, plus restitution that'll keep her in payment plans until her grandkids retire. Summit Holdings is under federal investigation for real estate fraud and bribery. But the part that really got me? Emily. She was reinstated by the city council, got her job back, and even received a settlement from the developer's insurance to go back to school. Her name's been cleared, her son got a new swing set from a few grateful neighbors. Turns out some communities can heal. As for the residents, I gave them fair leases. No HOA, no fine print, no fear. Just straightforward contracts and open communication. A few moved out, embarrassed by how they treated me. Most stayed, relieved to be free from clipboard tyranny. We renamed it Callahan Acres. And yeah, I kept the statue. But I moved it to the edge of the property, facing a wall, so Brenda Holt's bronze likeness can spend eternity looking at a blank fence. Poetic justice in suburban form. That first night, I sat in a lawn chair overlooking Serenity Pond, formerly my fishing hole, and raised a cold beer to the stars. I bought this land twice, I said, grinning. But I bought my peace once. And that's... If you found this story helpful or eye-opening, send it to a friend who's ever dealt with HOA headaches, land disputes, or just needs a reminder that truth has legs, even if it limps a little on the way to court. Leave a comment and let me know what you think of this story. What would you do if 89 homes popped up on your land? And don't forget, subscribe for more wild, true-feeling stories packed with justice, chaos, and just the right amount of revenge. The next one, let's just say the HOA never saw that coming. And that's how I won back my land. Twice. Once with paperwork, once with patience. But more than that, I reclaimed my name, my peace, and my right to not be erased by someone who thought power came from a clipboard and a lie. This wasn't just about fences and fake maps. It was about standing up when no one believes you, holding your ground when the system folds, and finding the kind of justice that can't be printed on an... The lesson? You don't need to shout to be heard. You need proof, perseverance, and a little help from people who still believe in doing the right thing. Emily risked everything to speak up. Derek reminded me why smart friends matter. And those neighbors who once glared at me, they learned that silence doesn't protect you, it just delays the truth. Brenda had megaphones and meetings. I had a deed and a dream. In the end, the truth stood taller than the statue they built for her. So if you're dealing with something that feels impossible, remember it only looks unbeatable until somebody refuses to back down. That can be you. It should be you. And if you ever forget why it matters, just remember Pine Brook Hollow, now Callahan Acres, and how one fake sign tried to erase a real future. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who's going through a fight of their own. They need to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? What lesson hit home for you? And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next wild, true-feeling story where truth wins, justice shows up, and clipboard tyrants get exactly what they deserve. We've got more stories coming, and trust me, what's next, you're going to want to hear every word.